Здравствуйте. Hello and welcome to Russian language class. Let us have a quick recap of the topics that we discussed in the previous lesson. If you remember, in the previous lesson we discussed about the reflexive possessive pronoun swoi and its various forms in different cases. I have written a couple of sentences here with swoi in different cases. Let us look at the first sentence. Я сидел в своей комнате и читал. Я сидел в своей комнате и читал. Here, as you can see, своей has been used in the prepositional case after preposition в, and комната becomes комнате in the prepositional case, and своя becomes своей since комната is feminine gender noun. So, feminine gender form of своя in the prepositional case is своей. Я сидел в своей комнате и читал. I was sitting in my room and was reading. Next sentence. Мы подарили цветы своей преподавательнице. Мы подарили цветы своей преподавательнице. We gave or we gifted flowers to our female teacher, prepodavatelnitsa. So, here своей has been used in the dative case. Why? Because this represents the indirect object, кому. So, кому вы подарили цветы, мы подарили цветы своей преподавательнице. So, the feminine form of своя in the dative case is своей. So, that is how swoi, which is a reflexive possessive pronoun, is used in the various cases. So, here it has been used in the prepositional case, in the second sentence it has been used in the dative case. We have also discussed about the declension of adjectives and pronouns in the dative case in plural. So, let us look at some examples where they have been used in plural in the genitive case. First, I have written a question here, interrogative sentence. Чьи это машины? Чьи это машины? Whose are these cars? Это машины наших новых друзей. Это машины наших новых друзей. So, наши changes to наших in the genitive case. Новые changes to новых and друзья changes to друзей. So, these are the changes or these are the rules that applies for a noun, for a pronoun and for an adjective. Наши, наших, новые, новых and друзья, друзей. So, this is all about our revision part. Let us move on to the topics that we will be discussing in the current lesson. If you remember, we have already introduced the verbs of motion in the earlier lessons. What are verbs of motion? We have so far discussed only two verbs of motion, идти and ехать. Verbs of motion denotes a motion or a movement of something or someone. Идти and ехать, both of these verbs mean to go or to come. So, how do we differentiate whether it means to go or to come? We differentiate between the meanings depending on the prepositions which are used after идти or ехать. идти denotes a movement by walking and ехать denotes a movement on a vehicle. If it is a vehicular motion, then we will use ехать, and if it is motion by walking, movement by walking, then we use идти. We have also discussed the conjugation of идти and ехать. If you remember, идти is conjugated as या इदू ती जियोश ओनना इजियोत मी इजियोम वी इजियोचे आणि इदूत आणि येखच या येदू ती येजश ओनना येजित मी येजिम वी येजिचे आणि येदूत. And one more important thing about these verbs are they represent a movement from one point to another. So, this is a single directional movement. So, now I have written our topic is verbs of motion with prefixes. So, the primary meaning of itchy we have already discussed, it is a single unidirectional motion. But there are certain prefixes which are used with these verbs, and what do? They add an extra meaning which is added to its primary meaning. For example, we will now discuss the prefixes va, vi, pri, u, pad, at and the. All these prefixes, they denote some additional meaning in addition to the primary meaning of these verbs. So, we will now discuss all these prefixes separately and in detail. I have told you that when prefixes are added to the verbs of motion, they add some meanings to the in addition to the primary meanings of the verbs. So, let us first dwell on the prefixes va and vi. Why I have taken them together is the meanings of va and vi, they are antonymous to each other. Let us see how they are different and how they are related to each other. One more important thing here to mention is whenever we add a prefix to a verb of motion, they become perfective verbs. So, if we add va to the verb itchy, it becomes vaichi, and vaichi is always a perfective verb, and vaichi requires a specific case of a noun and prepositions to be used after this verb. So, va, when we add this prefix to itchy, it becomes vaichi, and vaichi I have represented, there is an image and it represents the meaning of va. As you can see, the arrow goes inside. So, vaichi will mean to go inside, to go in. Similarly, when we add the prefix va to the verb yekhach, it becomes vyekhach. Please take care of the spelling. When we write vyekhach, we are adding a hard sign here after the prefix and before the verb of motion, vyekhach, and it also means to go in, to go inside. And whenever we use either vaichi or vyekhach, we are supposed to use the preposition va or na plus accusative case of a noun, and it answers the question kuda. So, these are some of the things that you need to remember while using the prefixed verb of motion in a sentence. Va or na plus accusative case, and it answers the question kuda. So, va means to go inside. What does this picture represent? It represents a motion of coming out or going out of somewhere. So, vi as a prefix, it adds the meaning to go out. So, when we add this prefix to itchy, we get vichi. Vichi means to go out or to come out of somewhere. Similarly, when we add the same prefix with yekhach, we get vyekhach. Vyekhach means again to come out, to go out from somewhere. When we use these prefixed verbs of motion, then these verbs require the preposition is and genitive case of a noun. Is means from. So, to come out or to go out from somewhere. So, here from is conveyed by the preposition is and then genitive case of a noun, and it answers the question atkuda. Atkuda is from where. It can also be used with the prepositions va or na plus accusative case of a noun while answering the question kuda. So, the prefix vi can answer two questions, atkuda and kuda. So, when we answer kuda, then we are supposed to use va or na, the prepositions plus the accusative case of a noun, and when we answer atkuda, we use is, which means from, and then genitive case of a noun. So, now we will look at some examples with the verbs vaiti, vichi, viechat and viechat. Let us look at some of the examples with the verbs of motion with prefixes va and vi. Ya vashol vauditoriu. Ya vashol vauditoriu. Vashol is to enter or to go inside. So, I entered the room. I entered into the room. Auditoria can be a hall or auditorium or whatever. Ya vishal is auditory. Ya vishal is auditory. I came out of the room. So, here as you can see, the question that this sentence answer is atkuda, from where, and here this is answers to the question kuda, to where. So, vashol answers the question kuda and vishal here answers the question atkuda, from where. And when we answer atkuda, we use is, the preposition is, plus the noun in the genitive case. So, auditoria has become auditori and vishal is the past tense form of vichi. The next example, ya vashol komnatu. Ya vashol komnatu. I entered or I went inside the room. So, here again it answers the question kuda. Ya vishal is komnati v koridor. Ya vishal is komnati v koridor. So, here there are two parts. Is komnati answers to the question atkuda and v koridor answers to the question kuda. So, when we answer kuda, we use the prepositions va or na plus the noun in the accusative case. That is why koridor, which is a masculine noun, has not changed its form. And when we answer atkuda, we use is plus genitive case. Is komnati, from the room, and here to the corridor. So, I came out from the room or I came out of the room to the corridor. So, here there are two parts, one is from where are you coming out and the other one is to where you are coming out. So, these are some of the examples of the verbs of motion with prefixes va and vi. So, now we will look at other prefixes. The next pair of prefixes with verbs of motion we are going to discuss is the prefixes pad and the prefix at. Pad and at, and why we are discussing these prefixes in pairs? Because they have antonymous meanings. So, whatever the prefix pad conveys, at conveys exactly opposite meaning to it. So, pad, I have drawn a diagram here which shows that when you move towards something or move up to something, it is represented by the prefix pad, and if you move away from something or somewhere, it is represented by the prefix at. So, pad when you move up to and at when you move away. So, these are the meanings, and that is conveyed by the prefixes pad and at. So, now let us try to use these prefixes with the verbs itchi and yekhat. So, when we add this prefix to itchi, we get padaichi, pad plus itchi, padaichi. Similarly, pad plus yekhat is padiyekhat, and again we are adding a hard sign here between the prefix and the verb in order to retain its pronunciation. So, padaichi and padiyekhat. Similarly, if we add the prefix at with itchi, what do we get? We get ataichi. So, when we add this prefix to the verb itchi, we get ataichi, and if we add the prefix at to the verb yekhat, we get atiyekhat. Again we are adding a hard sign in between the prefix and the verb. We have also discussed that these prefixed verbs of motion or the verbs of motion with prefixes, they require a specific preposition along with the specific case of nouns. So, if we are using the verbs of motion with the prefix pad, then we will use the preposition ka plus the noun in the dative case, and it will answer the question kuda. So, ka, which is a preposition along with the noun in the dative case, and it will answer to the question kuda. And if we are using a verb of motion with the prefix at, then we are supposed to use the preposition at and the noun in the genitive case, and it will answer to the question at kuda. So, pad we use the preposition ka and the noun in the dative case, and at we use the preposition at and the noun in the genitive case, and it answers the question at kuda. So, now we will look at some examples of the verbs of motion with the prefixes pad and at. Let us have a look at some of the examples of the verbs of motion with prefixes pad and at. Prapada vachal pada shulk daske. The teacher moved up to the blackboard. Daska is blackboard, or moved closer to the blackboard. Prapada vachal ata shol at daski. We have discussed that when we add at to the verb of motion itchi, it gives us the meaning to move away. So, the teacher moved away from the blackboard. So, here we are saying that the teacher moved closer or up to the blackboard, and when we add the prefix at, it gives us the meaning to move away from something. So, the teacher moved away from the blackboard. The next example is Avtobus pada shulk stanovke. Avtobus pada shulk stanovke. Avtobus, the bus, pada shul, moved up to or approached towards, Astanovka is the bus stand, approached the bus stand, or it moved towards the bus stand. Avtobus atashol atastanovki. In this sentence, we have used atashol, which means to move away. The bus moved away from the bus stand. So, here we are answering the question at kuda, and here we are answering the question kuda. So, this is the difference between the prefixes pad and at and their meanings and the questions they answer and the various prepositions that they take and the cases of nouns. So, pat takes the preposition ka along with the noun in the dative case, and at takes the preposition at along with the noun in the genitive case. So, now we will look at the other pair of prefixes. The next pair of prefixes that we are going to discuss is the prefixes pre and u. What happens when we add the prefix pre and u to the verbs of motion? Let us first discuss about the meaning that it conveys. You can see the diagrams here and here, and if you look at the diagrams closely, you will find that the diagrams are similar to the diagrams that we have drawn for the prefixes v and v. Then what is the difference between pre and v and u and v? The difference lies in the distance. For example, if you are coming to a place from a distance place, then we are using the prefix pre. Similarly, if you are going away from a place to a distant place, then we use the prefix u. But v and v are used when you are coming to a place from a closer by distance. For example, if you are standing in a corridor and you are entering into a room, then we will use the prefix v. Similarly, if you are inside a room, if you are coming out of the room to the corridor, we will use the prefix v. But when you are reaching or you are arriving a place, then we will use the prefix pre, and when you are leaving or when you are coming out of a place, then we use the prefix u. So, what happens when we add these prefixes to the verbs of motion ichi and yechat? Pre, when it is added to the verb of motion ichi, we get the verb prichi, and if we add this prefix to yechat, we get priyechat, prichi and priyechat. So, when they are used in a sentence, they require the preposition ka along with the noun in the dative case, and it will answer to the question kamu, kamu. It can also be used with the prepositions va or na plus the noun in the accusative case, and it will answer to the question kuda. So, there are two prepositions which can be used with the verbs with prefix pre, ka and va or na. Now, the prefix u. So, what happens when we add this prefix u to the verbs ichi and yechat? Uichi, uichi and uyechat, uichi and uyechat. And these verbs, when used in a sentence, they are used with the prepositions is or sa plus the genitive case of a noun, or va or na plus accusative case of a noun, or together, both of them together. When it is used with is or sa with genitive case of a noun, it answers to the question atkuda, and when it is used with the prepositions va, na plus accusative case of a noun, it answers to the question kuda. Let us have a look at some of the examples. Studianti priехали в университет. Studianti priехали в университет. Here, приехать has been used with the preposition в and accusative case of the noun университет. It answers to the question kuda. So, what will be the question from this sentence? What question you can ask from this sentence? Куда приехали студенты? Куда приехали студенты? Where did the students arrive? Студенты приехали в университет. The next example is больной пришел к врачу. Больной is patient. The patient came to the doctor. So, here we have used the dative case of a noun vrach and the preposition ka. So, while discussing the preposition ka, we have already discussed that it also conveys the meaning to go to someone or something. So, balnoi prishulk vrachu, the patient came to the doctor. Now, some examples with the verbs uichi and uyechat. Studianti uyechali is universitieta. Studianti uyechali is universitieta. The students left from the university. The students left from the university. Here we have used the preposition is plus the genitive case of the noun universitiet, which is universitieta, and it will answer to the question atkuda. Atkuda ushli or uyechali studianti. Studianti uyechali is universitieta. The next example is мы уехали из Москвы в Петербург. Мы уехали из Москвы в Петербург. We left from Moscow to Petersburg. We left from Moscow to Petersburg. So, here again there are two components. One is plus the noun in the genitive case, and the second one is were plus the noun in the accusative case. So, the first component here is Moskvi. It answers to the question atkuda. Atkuda мы уехали. Мы уехали is Moskvi. And the second component, which is в Petersburg, в plus noun in the accusative case, that answers to the question куда. Куда мы уехали из Москвы. Мы уехали из Москвы в Петербург. We left from Moscow to Petersburg. So, these are some of the examples with the prefixes pre and u. I hope you must have understood their meanings and their uses in the sentences. So, there is one more prefix that we are going to discuss, which is the. We will now discuss the prefix the when it is used with a verb of motion. So, what happens when we use the prefix the? The means to reach as far as or to reach a certain point. So, it means to reach up to a certain point as far as something. See, this is the diagram which conveys the meaning of the. So, when we add the with ichi, we get the ichi. When we add the with yekhach, we get the yekhach. The ichi and the yekhach to reach or to go as far as something or to reach somewhere. The, when used with the verb of motion, it requires the preposition the with the genitive case of a noun, and it will answer to the question kuda. For example, या доехал до кинотеатра на автобусе. Я доехал до кинотеатра на автобусе. So, I reached the movie theatre or movie hall on bus. Here na avtobuse is in the prepositional case. So, whenever we have to say that I went or I came to some point on something, whenever we are denoting a vehicle, we use the prepositional case, and it answers to the question na chum. Ya doехал до кинотеатра на автобусе. I reached the movie hall or movie theatre on a bus. Next example, они доехали до бассейна на метро. Они доехали до бассейна на метро. Bassein is pool or swimming pool, whatever it means, pond also. Они доехали до бассейна. They reached the pool on metro. Metro doesn't change its form in any of the cases. That is why metro in the prepositional case has remained metro. And the basseina, bassein has changed in the genitive case. Why? Because of the preposition the. So, whenever there is a preposition the, we are supposed to use the genitive case of the noun, and that is the form of bassein in the genitive case. So, this is about the prefix the. So, whenever we use the prefix the, we are supposed to use the plus the genitive case of a noun. So, this is all we have for today. So, what all we have learned today? We have learned the prefixes with the verbs of motion, and how many prefixes we have discussed? We have discussed the prefixes v and v, pre and u, at and the, and pad. So, we have discussed 7 prefixes. So, this is all for today. We will meet in the next class. Till then, spasiba, do svidaniya.